Well, we got some new breaking news in that fast-moving story about the indictment of the former FBI Director James Comey. We figured out, I believe, what the quote-unquote perjury statements are, what the leaks they were talking about, why the grand jury didn't ultimately indict on count one. I've got the receipts for you, including Comey's testimony, not only in 2020, but in 2018 about a 2016 event. And then we'll talk about how Lindsay Halligan, with absolutely no federal experience, no federal prosecutorial experience, she'd been a federal prosecutor for 48 hours, effectively by herself, with a handwritten indictment, went in the middle of the night to get an indictment of the former FBI director. And what is so wrong about that, including that she overrode a memo written by prosecutors in her office that she inherited. They told her there is no case against James Comey and a case cannot be brought against him. She overwrote that. She marched into court like in the middle of the night with others that had just been appointed, like Meg Cleary by Pam Bondi. It caught the magistrate judge by surprise. Like, you're here in the middle of the night after grand juries usually meet. It's a handwritten indictment that's got typos and errors in it that I'm going to talk to you about. And then we've got the assignment of the judge. And Donald Trump's not going to like this judge. I'll just put it out there. Eastern District of Virginia, federal judge appointed by Joe Biden, Michael Nachmaninoff, who used to be a federal public defender. And he has a link back to Donald Trump and Rudy Giuliani, because when he was a magistrate judge, he presided over the arraignments of Lev Parnas and Igor Fruman, who were indicted and eventually convicted for campaign finance fraud involving Rudy Giuliani. All right, we'll bring it all together right here in the Midas Touch Network and Legal AF. Let's start with the indictment, which has a lot of problems. In fact, in the arraignment that's going to happen in October for Comey, he's going to likely move to dismiss this indictment on various grounds. I'm sure we're going to get an aggressive motion to dismiss. I mean, just to show you where we are with where James Comey's head is out. As soon as he was indicted, he issued a video telling us we cannot live on our knees, and he certainly won't. Let's play the video. My family
and I have known for years that there are costs to standing up to Donald Trump, but we couldn't imagine ourselves living any other way. We will not live on our knees, and you shouldn't either. Somebody that I love dearly recently said that fear is the tool of a tyrant, and she's right. But I'm not afraid, and I hope you're not either. I hope instead you are engaged, you are paying attention, and you will vote like your beloved country depends upon it, which it does. My heart is broken for the Department of Justice, but I have great confidence in the federal judicial system, and I'm innocent. So let's have a trial.
And keep the faith. Okay, now, let's go to the indictment. And I'll tell you the problems with it. And I'll tell you why the grand jury apparently was not able to indict on count one and what count one is all about. I will put it up on the screen. First of all, let's go through the problems with this. There's no page numbers on it. It's a handwritten, presumably, I guess, by the jury foreperson. Because it looks like it matches her handwriting. The jury foreperson has to scribble in the name of the defendant. It's not even typed up. James B. Comey Jr. It says, as a foreperson, I report that on September 25th, 2025, 12 or more grand jurors did not concur in finding an indictment on count one only, which is weird. She should have said we indicted on 2 counts, but not on count one. And then she presumably signs it. Let's go to the actual indictment, which was typed up, no page numbers, and there's 2 count twos. Why not? So count one, let me see if I can translate this, and I'll play you a clip. It says, on or about September 30th, 2020, in the Eastern District of Virginia, because Comey was testifying from his home because of COVID. He did willfully and knowingly make a materially false and fictitious and fraudulent statement. By falsely stating to a U.S. Senator, I believe that's Lindsey Graham, during a Senate Judiciary Committee hearing that he did not remember being taught of person one's approval of a plan concerning person 2 in a 2016 U.S. presidential election. All right. Person 2 is, person 1 is Hillary Clinton, we believe. Person 2 is Donald Trump. And this was the exchange I'm going to show you right now that I believe this indictment is talking about. Let's play the Graham-Comey exchange.
2016, the U.S. intelligence officials forwarded an investigative referral of FBI to FBI Director James Comey and Assistant Director of Counterintelligence Peter Strzok regarding U.S. presidential candidate Hillary Clinton's approval of a plan concerning U.S. presidential candidate Donald Trump and Russian hackers hampering U.S. elections as a means of distracting the public from her use of a private email server. You don't remember getting that or being taught? That doesn't ring any
bells with me.
Okay. Well, that's a pretty stunning thing. It didn't ring a bell, but it did come to you. Let's just end with this. You get this inquiry from the Intelligence Committee to look at the Clinton campaign, basically trying to create a distraction, accusing Trump of being a Russian agent or a Russian stooge or whatever to distract from her email server problems. And how far-fetched is that, Mr. Comey, when we now know that the Democratic Party through Fusion GPS hired Christopher Steele, a foreign agent who had a very strong bias against Trump, who hired a Russian subsource who the FBI believed to be a Russian spy to compile a dossier that was a bunch of crap to be used against an American citizen working for the Trump campaign. You already knew that. Seems to me you'd want to investigate other allegations, but you're telling me that you don't recall this.
I'm sorry, Senator, is there a question?
Yes, you don't recall this inquiry I just read about September the 2016.
No, as I said, it doesn't, again,
do you remember being told?
It doesn't sound familiar. And then it says that the statement was false because Comey then and there knew he had in fact been provided information regarding Hillary Clinton's approval of a plan concerning Trump. All right, that has to do with memory. And you saw the statement. It's very hard to get perjury out of. I don't believe that I received that, and I don't recall that. It's very hard to get you lied under oath. You mean on a memory test. And I think that's why the grand jury did not indict on that count. Let's go to count 2, which seems to be another leak issue or issue about a leak. So count 2 says that on the same testimony on September 30th, 2020, that Comey lied, falsely stated to a U.S. Senator during a Senate Judiciary Committee hearing that James Comey, had not authorized someone else at the FBI to be an anonymous source in news reports regarding an FBI investigation concerning person 1. Our person 1 again is Trump. The person 1 again is Hillary Clinton. The FBI anonymous source we think is Andy McCabe, who used to be the deputy director of the FBI. And then they say that the statement was false because he had in fact authorized person 3. See how sloppy this is? They don't name person 3. What they meant to say is that there was an FBI agent who was an anonymous source, who was person 3. I think that's McCabe, to serve as an anonymous source regarding an FBI investigation regarding person 1. So that he testified that he did not authorize McCabe to be an anonymous source, we believe, to the Wall Street Journal in 2016 regarding an FBI investigation concerning Hillary Clinton. It didn't even involve Donald Trump, and that violated. In fact, let me play you the exchange between Ted Cruz and Comey that we think forms the basis of this perjury count. Let's go Cruz and Comey.
Assets. All right, let's shift to another topic. On May 3rd, 2017, in this committee, Chairman Grassley asked you point blank, quote, have you ever been an anonymous source in news reports about matters relating to the Trump investigation or the Clinton investigation? You responded under oath, quote, never. He then asked you, quote, have you ever authorized someone else at the FBI to be an anonymous source in news reports about the Trump investigation or the Clinton administration? You responded again under oath, no. Now, as you know, Mr. McCabe, who works for you, has publicly and repeatedly stated that he leaked information to the Wall Street Journal and that you were directly aware of it and that you directly authorized it. Now, what Mr. McCabe is saying and what you testified to this committee cannot both be true. One or the other is false. Who's telling the truth?
I can only speak to my testimony. I stand by what the testimony you summarized that I gave in May of 2017.
So your testimony is you've never authorized anyone to leak. And Mr. McCabe, if he says contrary, is not telling the truth. Is that correct?
Again, I'm not going to characterize Andy's testimony, but mine is the same today.
All right, I'm going to make a final point because my time has expired. This investigation of the president was corrupt. The FBI and the Department of Justice were politicized and weaponized. And in my opinion, there are only two possibilities: that you were deliberately corrupt or woefully incompetent. And I don't believe you were incompetent. This has done severe damage to the professionals and the honorable men and women at the FBI because law enforcement should not be used as a political weapon. And that is the legacy you've left.
Now, this is not the first time that Comey testified to a Senate committee. In 2018, he also testified about the fact that he kept memos and wrote memos about his exchange with Donald Trump soon after being fired by Donald Trump, presumably because he didn't pass the loyalty test that Donald Trump said, I want you to stop the General Flynn investigation and get me out from under this Russia hoax. And he wouldn't do it. He started taking copious notes and memos. He said he did that because he wanted to make sure there was a record. And then when Donald Trump said, I hope there are audio tapes of our meeting, Comey said, well, if he's going to try to defame me, I have my own notes of the meeting and I want to get them out. So he admitted, and so did Daniel Richman admitted, that he gave the memos that he had written contemporaneous with his interviews with Donald Trump and meetings with Donald Trump to Professor Daniel Richman at Columbia. Who's that? He's a former assistant U.S. attorney from the Southern District of New York, who was a friend and confidant of James Comey, who was put on the payroll of the FBI as a special employee. And both Richman and ultimately Comey have admitted that Richman took the memos, gave them to the New York Times, and the New York Times published it off of those memos, and we knew that at the time. In fact, here's Comey talking about why he believes he got fired. Let's play his opening statement.
I thought I would just offer some very brief introductory remarks, and then I would welcome your questions. When I was appointed FBI director in 2013, I understood that I served at the pleasure of the president. Even though I was appointed to a 10-year term, which Congress created in order to underscore the importance of the FBI being outside of politics and independent, I understood that I could be fired by a president for any reason or for no reason at all. And on May the 9th, when I learned that I had been fired, for that reason, I immediately came home as a private citizen. But then the explanations, the shifting explanations, confused me and increasingly concerned me. They confused me because the president and I had had multiple conversations about my job, both before and after he took office. And he had repeatedly told me I was doing a great job and he hoped I would stay. And I had repeatedly assured him that I did intend to stay and serve out the remaining 6 years of my term. He told me repeatedly that he had talked to lots of people about me, including our current Attorney General, and had learned that I was doing a great job and that I was extremely well liked by the FBI workforce. So it confused me when I saw on television the president saying that he actually fired me because of the Russia investigation, and learned again from the media that he was telling privately other parties that my firing had relieved great pressure on the Russia investigation. I was also confused by the initial explanation that was offered publicly that I was fired because of the decisions I had made during the election year. That didn't make sense to me for a whole bunch of reasons, including the time and all the water that had gone under the bridge since those hard decisions had had to be made. That didn't make any sense to me. And although the law required no reason at all to fire an FBI director, the administration then chose to defame me and, more importantly, the FBI by saying that the organization was in disarray, that it was poorly led, that the workforce had lost confidence in its leader. Those were lies, plain and simple. And I am so sorry that the FBI workforce had to hear them, and I'm so sorry that the American people were told them.
Now, he's later asked about the loyalty test conversation with Donald Trump and as the basis for the ruining of their relationship. Let's play that clip.
In the course of that, and so that happens on the day before. On the 14th, the president makes specific reference to that. And so that's why I understood him to be saying that what he wanted me to do was drop any investigation connected to Flynn's account of his conversations with the Russians.
Finally, we get to the memo leaking. And he talks about the memos that he created. Let's play that clip. Your testimony
Was that you went to Attorney General Sessions and said, don't ever leave me alone with him again. Are you saying that you also told him that he had made a request that you let it go with regard to part of the investigation of Michael Flynn?
No, I specifically did not. I did not.
You mentioned that from your very first meeting with the president, you decided to write a memo memorializing the conversation. What was it about that very first meeting that made you write a memo when you had not done that with two previous presidents?
As I said, a combination of things. A gut feeling is an important overlay on but the circumstances that I was alone, the subject matter, and the nature of the person that I was interacting with, and my read of that person. And yeah, and really just a gut feel laying on top of all of that, it's going to be important to protect this organization that I make records of this.
And finally, did you show copies of your memos to anyone outside of the Department of Justice?
Yes.
And to whom did you show copies?
I asked, President tweeted on Friday after I got fired that I better hope there's not tapes. I woke up in the middle of the night on Monday night, because it didn't dawn on me originally, that there might be corroboration for our conversation. There might be a tape. And my judgment was I needed to get that out into the public square. And so I asked a friend of mine to share the content of the memo with a reporter. Didn't do it myself for a variety of reasons, but I asked him to because I thought that might prompt the appointment of a special counsel. And so I asked a close friend
of mine to do it. So again, the indictment based on these events that I just laid out, very difficult to sustain that beyond a reasonable doubt to a federal jury of Comey's peers in the Eastern District of Virginia, which will end up being a fair amount of Democrats in that pool. He only has to get one person to believe that there's reasonable doubt about that issue. But let's be frank, Comey's looking at 5 years. Donald Trump directed traffic here. He not only forced Pam Bondi to do it, there's reporting that Pam Bondi didn't believe this was a strong case either. He overrode Pam Bondi. He wrote that. Donald Trump wrote that direction to her in the social media post. Come on, Pam, hurry up and use Lindsay Halligan. Then he appointed Lindsay Halligan, an 8-year lawyer, insurance defense lawyer, car accident lawyer, absolutely no experience to being a federal prosecutor. She becomes an instant federal prosecutor. She's told on day one by her team that in the Eastern District there is no case. She overrides it. She runs into court. She gets a grand jury with the sloppy indictment that let's go to page 3 of the document, or page 4, that she signs, which is totally unusual. But first of all, she's not a member of the Virginia bar. So I don't know how she's signing Lindsay Halligan in this courtroom. I don't think she's even a member of the federal bar. Normally, this would be signed by somebody in her office, but nobody in her office wanted to sign it, so she had to sign it. Okay. These are all the things that are going to be brought up by the lawyers representing Comey. And then let me just turn briefly here at the end to the Judge Michael Nachmaninoff, a former federal magistrate judge, before that, a federal criminal public defender. That's his background and experience, and he was the lawyer that arraigned Lev Parnas and Igor Fruman on $1 million bail and got them out of jail. So he's tussled with the Trump administration before. Biden appointee, I'm sure every little move of his is going to be carefully watched. By Donald Trump, there will be likely a magistrate judge underneath Nachmaninoff who will handle the day-to-day, the arraignment, the taking of the plea. If there's a motion to dismiss, that normally goes up to the Article 3 judge.